we go. I think we have everybody.
Hear me?
Very good, gentlemen. Let's get this show started. Agenda for 11 o'clock Friday, November 6th, 2020 Town of Quality Beach Special Council meeting to be held virtually, of course. Adoption of the agenda.
Agenda.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. And in my rush, gentlemen, I messed up a little bit already, which I did not do. Acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Coast Salish people, and we're holding this meeting here at their will. So thank you very much for that. New business. I guess before we get started on that, I just got a couple things I'm going to say. Turn it over to Councillor Harrison for 1 second, because we might come up with something that works for everybody, and I hope that's true. But in the meantime, this meeting was called by, of course, Councillor Westbrook and Councillor Walker in accordance with Section 126, I believe, the community charter. But due to the very fast timing, we were entering in an emotionally charged discussion with no benefit, further staff advice, staff reports, legal advice, etc. I have a number of concerns with that, of course, but I'd like you to consider when making these decisions today that we're lacking some information. I appreciate there's been a very public process to the point of me communicating through you through an open letter, which I shared on our website. Even though it's a matter the public is interested in, I do not understand why members of council are calling this meeting believe inappropriate to have this in an open meeting. I think these resolutions we're about to discuss today would typically be in camera, as they seem to propose that the town consider a breach of contract with an active contractor and the appear intent on entering into a lease and/or land agreement without an appropriate process and consideration of value. Saying that, but here we are, we're jumping in without any knowledge of the consequences and liabilities we might be exposing our taxpayers and our community to. So with that, I'm going to turn it over quickly to Councillor Harrison, who I believe has done some work on this morning. He's had a chat with me, he's chat with staff, and I believe a chat with Councillor Westbrook as well about what may happen. So Councillor Harrison, please.
Yeah, so thank you. I do want to recognize that I think one thing I want to flag for myself is I was confused early on about how a motion to rescind worked. I was confused between the 1/3 and simple majority rules with Robert's rules. But I do have some concerns all the same with the motion to rescind based on the language of the community charter, some recent court precedents, and some published legal opinions that I found online. So one thing I'd highlight, the preeminent document for a local government is always the community charter. That is the only thing above that is essentially federal regulation, which we don't usually deal with. And Section 131 of the community charter talks about reconsideration. It says, quote from Section 131, 2 sub B, a matter may not be considered under this section if, ellipsis, there has already been a reconsideration under the section in relation to the matter. Now, technically what we're doing here is a rescission. It's not a reconsideration. But the issue I would have is the October 28th meeting, there's something in law called pith and substance, where you talk about what are you really talking about? So there's a BC Court of Appeal decision with the City of Victoria where they talk about the justice rights, how it's pith and substance refers to, quote, the dominant character, end quote, of the law. And the question I would have—
Point of order.
Is, yes?
Can we get a motion on the, I appreciate your letter, Mayor Weiss, and I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Harrison, but can we get a motion on the floor so that we know that what we're debating is germane?
I'm okay moving forward at this point, and we'll get the motion on the floor after Councillor Harrison is done. Go ahead, Councillor Harrison.
Appeal?
You want to appeal my decision?
Yes, I don't find that this is germane as we don't have any motions on the floor.
I can help by making a motion.
Of course you would. Go ahead, Councillor Westbrook.
Thank you. I move the second item, which is the council direct staff to immediately stop the demolition of St. Andrew's Lodge. And I'd like to add to that we put signage up accordingly if this motion passes.
Second.
Yeah.
Councillor Harrison, go ahead.
Okay, so I had something which was sort of related to that too. But I think we can just sort of carry on with this part because it was very similar. The intention here is just we sort out some of the legal questions, and while we're doing that, we pause all the work and we don't proceed anyways. So I think it sort of functions the same way. So I'm fine with the motion as is for this portion. But as it relates to the first portion, not this, the rescission, I'll actually stop here. Because I think this is what I was hoping to just move as a motion. This is essentially the same thing at the end of the day. I was hoping instead that we'd get some reports and then make a final decision, but this, at the same time, we'd be pausing the work. So for me, it's potato on this one.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That motion passes. Councillor Westbrook.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. The third portion, where we would work with another group, QCUs, to establish a board, I think would be helpful for the group to pull together a number of people who have indicated by phone or by email or by going to the site and have offered their expertise and their experience with raising funds to make this project work as far as a facility, a town asset that could come to Qualicum Beach for the benefit of residents and visitors without cost to the town. So that's the third paragraph of this new business. So I move that today.
Second.
Discussion, Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, so this is something where I actually have several issues with this, owing to sentiments that have been expressed by some individuals. And we're going to start getting into a period where we'd be discussing named individuals, which is usually a reason to go in camera. So I'd strongly suggest we have debate on the third motion in camera, if we could. I would greatly prefer to avoid a public debate of named individuals in the community.
Councillor Walker.
I'm not sure what individuals you're referring to, and I'm not sure that the actions of individuals really matter. Basically, what we're doing is directing staff to work with the society to come up with a proposal, to come up with a lease. So we're not entering into anything. We're just starting a conversation. Town staff have expressed that they do not have the capacity to do a lot of the planning portions of this, and to be able to defer that to a third party to come up with recommendations, I think would be valuable for our town.
Sorry,
Councillor Harrison.
there's actually several reasons for this. We're getting even beyond the part where we're discussing named individuals, which is a reason under the community charter to go in camera. Beyond that too, we are making a decision that we will lease the Lodge building in a similar region to the Tosh Arts Society. We have had no reports here on the financial implications of such a lease. And it's restored to the town at no cost, but there's no mention of operational costs, liabilities, maintenance. So there's all these financial issues which do need to be discussed. And this motion commits us to a lease when we don't have the requisite facts to make that lease. It says we will lease the building in a similar arrangement, not saying may lease. It's also saying it's only the cost to restore at no cost to the town. It's not saying the cost of operations. It's not saying the cost of maintenance, the cost of liabilities. So there's huge costs which are not accounted for, which we have zero information on. And it's also committing us to course of action on 1 day's notice where we don't actually have the requisite information to make an informed decision. It's highly inappropriate.
Councillor Filmer.
Thank you. First, I just want to say, our job is not to debate people. Our job here would be to debate a decision and with an organization. If we have an issue with a person that is part of an organization, then you're in the wrong job. If you don't like someone that's in an organization, that's on you. That's not we should not be making decisions off of not liking somebody.
Point of order, Councillor Filmer is surmising what I was actually saying. It's actually people who are direct relatives of Miss Little who have the issue, not myself.
Thank you. Carry on.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind Councillor Harrison that's not how a point of order works, but thank you. Going forward from that, this council throughout our 2 years has made decisions on the whim without staff reports. I believe when the Perfect Storm approached this council for a check of $75,000, we made a decision without a staff report. moving forward with something like this is the exact same. I don't see this really needing a staff report because this organization is just going to work with us.
Point of order, there was a
don't-
staff report, Councillor
Point of
Fulmer's
order,
mistake.
point of order, please, Mr. Harrison.
Point of order, there was a staff report,
And
Councillor
I'll
Fulmer's
address
mistake, and
it.
we can refer to the minutes if need be.
Councillor Filmer, no need for that. Councillor Westbrook.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. I think I trust that the council is familiar with the arrangement we have with the old schoolhouse. And that's why I put it in there. It would be something similar. So it provides some flexibility, but it's the intent. It's the idea of having a board like we have at the old schoolhouse who run the facility. There is liability issues that are covered. There is maintenance issues that are covered. So I think it works well for that society, similar to the Historical Society, Historic Museum Society. And I think in a similar vein, this will work. This is nowhere near the size of structure or cost that we deal with when we talk about the old schoolhouse. But I think this is something that we can be familiar with. And so if we have a lease similar to that, we're consistent with other groups who have a similar enterprise. And I think it allows the group to call on all the people. We probably have about 400 emails who have said they will help raise money. We will help with the structure. We will help with their expertise to manage this. So I think there's a lot of similarities between this and the old schoolhouse, and I think a similar passion as well. And I actually recognize a number of people who were involved and some still are involved at the old schoolhouse who want to put their shoulder to the wheel on this project. Thank you.
Sorry.
I just want to speak that briefly. I think, Councillor Westbrook, we've had numerous discussions around these people you're actually saying should take this over. You weren't actually in favor of that before, so I find it strange that we're reversing on that. I think we need to make sure, I think we should put a society, not the queue. So we should put a society that can come forward, not just the one. Leave it open. What do you think?
If I could respond to that, that's why I'm suggesting that because they have the contacts of the people that want to get involved, we form a new society. That those people on that board will not be the same people. They may have one representative from QBQs, but the majority of the board will be people who only want to focus on St. Andrew's Lodge. Just like people at the old schoolhouse. If you ask them to join a whole bunch of other meeting groups, they're not going to join that. But if they just focus on this one item, and that's why QCQs, they do a lot of other projects. They don't want to necessarily be involved in that. They just want to stick to this one. And that's why I'm suggesting a separate called the
I can see you, Councillor Harrison.
St. Andrew's Lodge Historical and Cultural Society. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
I think one problem with this, though, is that we have not formally rescinded the resolution of council to demolish the building. And I strongly believe that we need a legal opinion to make sure we can actually rescind that decision. So I just moved the following. I just amend the motion, striking out from council to the following, which is that that council receives a written legal opinion relating to a motion to rescind in light of the debate and decision of the October
Point of order.
meeting, the community charter and the town's procedure bylaw.
Councillor
No,
Walker.
technically it's an amendment. You can make an amendment on the fly.
Councillor Harrison, stop, please. Councillor Walker.
An amendment can't be used to change the main gist of a motion. So this is changing the motion completely from forming a society to doing a report. It's a completely different motion. If Councillor Harrison would like to lay this motion on the table, that is probably a more appropriate avenue.
Councillor Harrison.
Okay, no, I think Councillor Walker has the right of it, that it should be laid on the table. Because first, in order to make this motion, we need to make sure we can legally rescind the existing resolution of council. And that's something where I think there's a little bit of lack of clarity, which was I was trying to originally speak at the start of the meeting. If we're not legally allowed to make the decision because we have already perhaps reconsidered it, or under Robert's Rules of Order, the work of the town has been executed, even if the work of the site has not been executed. Those are 2 points of fundamental legal nature, which would prevent us from doing a rescission and then prevents us from entering into this agreement. So I think first things first, let's get a legal opinion in writing, which says, yes, you can rescind. Then we can make a decision as a council when we know we can actually legally proceed. And we actually have a little bit more information on some of the costs associated with that decision as well. Because there are costs that will be associated with a rescission. you have to potentially pay out a contract. You're potentially breaching a contract. There might be legal fees involved as well, above and beyond that. So this is why I think it's important to lay this on the table and instead get a report on whether we have a legal right to rescind. And the motion would read as follows. That council receives a written legal opinion relating to a motion to rescind in light of the debate and decision of the October 28th meeting, the community charter, and the town's procedure bylaw, and that council receives a report on all costs associated with the motion to rescind.
I'll second that for discussion. I think
We haven't laid a motion on the table.
I'm not sure that we can move on the motion. I think what Councillor Harrison is saying, can we do that motion that you just did, Councillor Westbrook, without, I think we should have done them in order. We should have done number 1 first, so we could actually know what we're doing with it. We're all going to vote on this right here and now anyway, so it's not a big deal. Why don't we vote on what that legal aspect looks like, so we're all looking at the same page, and then we can go down. It makes sense. We all decide not to vote, or we vote to hold off reading legal opinion. Like, we've stopped it. We've stopped all work. I imagine that phone call's already gone through. We had that discussion with Daniel this morning, so that's already done. So now let's get a legal before we move forward with these other ones. You know, mission accomplished. We stopped the demolition. So let's just make sure that we as a council know all the ramifications of what's going forward. We'll get a legal staff report, then we'll get together and we'll have another discussion, which will be much more beneficial than jumping. Just my opinion. Councillor Westbrook.
Thank you, Bishop. I respect your thoughts on this. I understand it. From my experience, if the majority of the will of council is to go in a different direction, who's going to challenge that? If we want to go and say, let's work with this new group to build up this whole enterprise with a building and a new society, nobody's going to challenge it. Well, you actually passed a motion. Actually, the motion that we passed back then was to relocate or demolish. I don't think we actually looked at, well, we talked about it, to relocate, but we didn't do it. We immediately went ahead with the effort to demolish. So I think if the majority of council wants to do something, and the public can understand why we're doing that at no cost to the town, why would you go into a legal nightmare where you have one opinion, because every legal opinion will have another opinion opposed to it, and it's going to get a lot of money, a lot of time, unnecessarily. This could be a very community building effect, or it can be more divisive, both council and the public. So if majority of council today says, let's forget about demolishing it and let's work with a group who's going to look after it for us at no cost to the town, that seems like a very reasonable solution. I don't think any court would say, well, there's a procedure bylaw, and some other lawyer can say, well, you can go around it whatever way you want to do it. So I think going into a legal rabbit hole, I think, is unfortunate. I think it's expensive, and it just creates more uncertainty. So that's why after this motion passes, I would make a motion for the first one and carry on with this project, because I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I should never voted this way a couple of weeks ago, but I did. And then when I thought about it a lot more, I felt that we were going in the wrong direction. And that's why I apologize to everyone for not seeing that, so to speak, that light sooner, but I'm seeing it now, and I don't want to spend a lot of money on legal shenanigans. Thank you.
I wouldn't call it shenanigans. I think legal is important to get a legal on this, but Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess 2 points. The legal ramification will be for the contract between the town and Parksville Heavy Equipment. So that is likely going to be limited in amount, and I think that does need to be dealt with. So I agree with that. My other concern is just procedurally. The problem with the motion to lay on the table is if this passes, we don't actually allow for a motion to take from the table. So we kind of rushed our procedure bylaw and forgot that one.
No, actually, we added that one at your request.
Oh, good. I didn't see it in our sheet. I'm happy to hear that.
It's on the sheet.
Perfect.
That we do listen every now and again. Councillor Harris.
Well, the point I'd make is that we are creatures of the law. We are creatures of provincial law, and we do have to follow it, even if it's inconvenient or not something that we'd like. There's certainly certain restrictions that are set out under provincial law, which I'm not exactly always thrilled with, but it's what we have to follow. We are required to follow the law. It's not something we have an option on. We don't get to invent the law at the provincial level to suit our needs. Even if it is something that is a noble cause, we still have to operate within it. There are several emails I'm sure you've received recently, Councillor Westbrook, where people say we shouldn't change our minds. Let's provide the legal clarity that what we're doing is actually legally correct if we're going to move forward with retaining the building. Also, too, I would point out at no cost to the town, again, operational costs aren't included in that motion. We do have to look at that as a cost. In regards to your statement about relocation, we did discuss that, and that was something that was part of what was put out to the public going back several months. But the only organization that actually looked into that was briefly, there was Parksville Museum looked at it, and they found out that the building was too large to fit on their site. So they didn't follow up with that. But no one else has indicated a desire to take on the responsibility of having the building on their property. So it is something that we've looked at. I wouldn't say that we didn't look at that. I just say that there wasn't a lot of appetite in the community for that. And perhaps there could have been a broader discussion, maybe in the media, about what we're trying to do. And that's a fair conversation. But I do think it's important that we realize that we don't get to essentially be someone who buys a lotto ticket, goes to the cashier and says, I want to check my numbers on this. Then the draw is announced and we go back to the lotto store and say, I'd like to change the numbers on my ticket. We've made a decision to review this decision already, and we need to make sure that it doesn't legally form a reconsideration. Otherwise, we're breaching the community charter. And even if it's a good decision to breach the community charter, it's still a breach of the community charter. And that is not okay. I can't see a circumstance where we would say, the law doesn't matter to us, we just want to do what we want to do. And I'll go back again to a 2013 legal opinion from a guy named Bill Bullhauser, who literally wrote the book on local governance. He works for Young and Anderson. There's a 2013 public document, which you can look up and read online. And I showed this earlier to you, Councillor Westbrook. And it does say, no time limits are applicable under Robert's rules for a motion to rescind. But a motion to rescind, a motion to rescind a motion that has already been acted upon would be out of order. I don't think that we're bound by that, but I think it's worth looking into to make sure we're not breaching the laws of local government purposefully in making a decision. I think that's a pretty easy box to check. I think we'll get that response back pretty quickly. I don't think it's going to be something where they have to pour through 50 different cases and find 70 different precedents. I think it'll be a pretty fast answer, and then we'll have the answer for the public. Yes, this is what a legal pathway forward. So if you disagree with the decision, that's fine. And then on top of that, we'll also have a staff report saying, and here are the costs associated. That's also a public decision. And we can all be held accountable for the implications of our decision. For my part, I know that maybe Councillor Walker might be thinking this is a procedural thing to delay it a few days. I do recognize that this is a council of 5. And even though I strongly disagree with retaining the lodge building, if right now it looks like the majority of council wants to keep the lodge building. So I would commit to try to find some kind of compromise to keep the lodge building if we can get a legal opinion that says there is a pathway for this. I think that's fair to the democracy that we have. But I think to proceed without that legal surety is a huge mistake. And it opens us up as an organization to being viewed as an organization that doesn't care about the law. We don't care if we break the community charter. We'll just do what we want. And I think that's a very dangerous road to go down. We'll have ramifications that last far longer than this decision, even if it is a good decision.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. So I agree with the sentiment, Councillor Harrison. I think that what we should do is the motion, the main motion on this third motion, if we amend that and instead of saying will, change that to could, and then perhaps we can change the language that says after the lodge building has been restored. I think that will address some of your concerns because then it will come back as a staff report. And then this whole discussion about the legal ramifications regarding the first motion to rescind, we're actually rescinding 3 motions. So I think if this discussion that we're having right now takes place as we discuss rescinding the entering into the contract, I think that is germane and useful. But there's 2 other motions in there that we're rescinding. One is to not work with queues. And to rescind that, I think we can all agree is not going to be a problem, because even though some communication may have gone to Q's on that, we're just telling staff, okay, you can work with them again. So I'm hoping that this motion to lay on the table, we can just move past this, amend this third motion to something that is sort of more of a consensus between us all, and then really dive into this when we get to our first motion about rescinding.
Councillor Westbrook.
Thank you, Worship. I agree that we could change that word, or that we can, that we change the words from will to could, and that will alleviate some concerns. And that first motion about rescinding the motion, there are several motions. One of talking about putting posts up where the building used to be if it's demolished and all that. But going back to acting on a decision by council, if the building was half destroyed or completely destroyed, then to rescind the motion would be futile. And I've seen that happen where a decision was made and then second thoughts, but it was literally too late. It was acted on and it was complete. This is not complete. The only thing they did is they removed the hazardous material, which is a good thing, no matter what happens in the future, whether it's going to be restored or whatever. So this is a good thing. But I don't believe the motion was completely acted on because the building is still there. Thank you.
Actually, I'd like to clarify that. I think our motion for that is our staff have completed their task, which I would argue they have. So, Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, I just point to Robert's Rules of Order. I have the old edition. I know our procedure bylaw says I should have the 12th, and I'm sorry, I'm not buying the 12th edition when I have the 11th, sorry. But the 11th edition, I'm assuming would be the same for a motion to rescind. I'm just assuming this. So if I'm wrong, I do apologize. But on page 308, it does say the unexecuted part of an order, however, can be rescinded or amended. And where I'm not clear is from the staff level of the town, I don't think there's a lot of work to do. But from the point of view of the contractor, obviously there's work left to do. And that's why the reasons I want that legal opinion is just to clear that up. I'm pretty sure Councillor Westbrook has the right of it. That sounds reasonable to me. I just want to make sure that there's clarity there. And then also too, I do feel strongly we should get a staff report on the costs associated with it. To the recommendation made by Councillor Walker, I think when we're no longer locked in with a will, and that's sort of like a may, and maybe we should also make clear that we don't expect staff to take the ball and run with it with this. This is not going to be like the daycare project, where it's basically staff did the lion's share of the work. We don't have the staff time, and we have East Village, Bus Garage, the affordable housing project coming out very soon. And we really need to prioritize those three big issues. So I'm willing to compromise a little bit on that motion, where you have that sense of a may. And maybe also too, and I'm just saying this as an attempt to get a compromise, we maybe discuss not just the cost of restoration, but discussing how we're going to look also at operational costs. No hard language, they will be responsible. No hard language saying they will not, but just we'll discuss it. And we'll look at some of those ongoing costs to the town. And then whatever council decides as a whole is the appropriate arrangement. Should there be an arrangement? Great. I would also suggest we should also make clear that the building will have to comply to appropriate town bylaws and provincial building code. So the rules in terms of town, in terms of flood control levels, we're not going to cut corners on flood control level. We're not going to cut corners in terms of accessibility. We're going to build the building like we would properly build it on that site. I just want to make sure that we don't go down a road where we put a new coat of paint on the building and then we're not actually following through on things. Because the language I saw on all the grant applications says you have to prepare for all hazards, which would include sea level rise. So I just think that it might be a good idea. But I would really strongly suggest that we include language that we're going to discuss the operational costs as well as just the reconstruction costs.
Councillor Filmer, I think I've missed you a few times, but his hands pop up. Do you want to speak still?
No, every time I want to say something, someone else says it for me, so that's it.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. I'm wondering, Councillor Harrison, if you withdraw your motion to lay on the table, and then we can start working on crafting this this main motion.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. That actually makes sense because we're getting into the weeds on two different motions simultaneously, and I think that doesn't lead to a debate. So back to your point, a little bit of wordsmithing on this, and that's something that I find a little bit more palatable. Obviously, for me, I would greatly prefer that they relocate the building off-site because I don't want it to be raised 6 feet. I really don't. I don't want it to have all the, like this, I see this as potentially being where we have the washroom change room that 2/3 of people wanted. That might not be the best building for it. And I'm thinking of the cost to renovate the washroom under the previous council, which came to a lot of money. I'm happy with changing the will to may. That then brings it back to council with a staff report. I think that was a suggestion you made or Councillor Westbrook made. Forgive me if I'm wrong.
Councillor Walker, but I
Oh,
support it.
Councillor Walker made it. Yeah.
And I
So I
support
think
it.
that's a fair comment because then it's coming back to council for a council decision. And I think that's fair. And I think also too, we had a little bit of an earlier discussion where it says similar arrangement. That sort of takes into consideration the operational costs because it's not will be the same arrangement. So that's going to come back for a subsequent council decision. So the may for me opens it up a little bit more.
So if you withdraw that motion, we can debate the main motion.
I think he,
I can't lay something on the table twice. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to
Yeah, you
technically
already have.
withdraw and then
Councillor-
maybe make the motion again.
it's on the,
Currently- Sorry, I want to get this clear. So currently I have a motion moved by Councillor Westbrook, seconded by Councillor Filmer, which is that council direct staff to support and work with the Qs in establishing the St. Andrews Lodge Historical and Cultural Society, to which the town will lease the lodge building in a similar arrangement as exists with the Tosh Art Society after the lodge building has been restored at no cost to the town. And then I had Councillor Walker moving and Councillor Westbrook seconding an amendment to strike the word will and insert the word could. But then somebody said may.
There was a motion to lay this all on the table too, to discuss
Yeah.
the legal, and that was
And there
seconded
was.
by Mayor Weiss.
Okay,
so
so lay this all on the table?
no, we're trying to get it off. So Councillor Harrison, if you would be so kind as to.
Yeah, no,
remove-
I can withdraw that temporarily. I would still like to make that motion that we get that report on legal and costs. But I can lay that on the table because I think we want to get this done first. That's not
Thank
lay on
you.
the table, withdraw, sorry.
Yeah, and I accept, I also do that. So now we're back to the third motion. And I believe we have the town may, not could. I think we've all agreed to that one at this point. Councillor Harrison.
The only thing here is I do remember some communication I've read where, again, it's a family member related to Miss Little expressed some very strong opinions. You might want to just say to support and work in establishing the St. Andrews Lodge Historical and Cultural Society and strike out with QBQs. Not because I have any particular reticence, but just because I'm aware of some things where there might be some issues. And I kind of feel a little bit like I can't discuss this when we're not in camera, but it's a awkward conversation. And I do think that there's a bit of a debate there.
We're discussing may.
Yeah.
I think we've all agreed.
And I
on
think
that.
Councillor Westbrook maybe is a very good person to speak to that.
We
Sorry.
haven't voted on the amendment. Striking will and inserting may.
Let's get that piece done, ladies and gentlemen. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Councillor Walker.
Hearing the concerns, perhaps, well, I'll move that we amend the main motion, striking everything after, including after, in a similar arrangement that exists right to the end. So striking out the last practically 2 lines.
Sorry, say that again?
So striking from this motion in a similar arrangement as exists with Tosh after the lodge building has been restored at no cost to the town.
I think Councillor Harrison was just talking about removing the,
I know we're jumping all over the place, but we talked about this one. This was one of the primary concerns raised earlier. We can add to this motion as well afterwards if members of council wish, and we can definitely talk about the queues thing. But this addresses 2 of the concerns raised by Councillor Harrison. I don't think it implies that the town will bear the costs for it. The idea is make a presentation or have queues work, or the current motion would be to have queues work to form a society. We would bring it back to council to have further discussions. So striking this last bit just adds clarity or reduces some of the ambiguity, perhaps.
I'm not so sure that, I think this piece was, the last 2 lines was, in my opinion, was one of the important things that Councillor Westbrook worked with Tosh. So I'm not sure that the last 2 lines are my concern to remove.
They
But,
were Councillor Harrison, so that's why I was suggesting it.
Okay,
Sorry,
Councillor
we've bounced around a lot in this debate. I would say just because it says similar, that's good enough. It gives us a starting point for the conversation, gives the community a starting point. The only thing I would suggest, sorry, we're bouncing around a bit and I feel badly. We might want to introduce timelines. I'd prefer that we don't have a lodge building where we're debating starting a society, debating fundraising at the end of our term, and there's not a defined timeline for progress, where we say, okay, at a certain point, we're going to have to say, this is clearly not seeing the forward progress we'd like, therefore we have to make a decision now. Once again, going back to relocating or destroying. So I don't know what sort of timelines are acceptable. I know it takes a little bit of time to get societies going, a little bit of time to move things forward, but I would suggest we might want to discuss having some sort of a timeline when this comes back to us. It's probably a discussion best not now in this motion, but I do think that's the direction we should go in, that there are clear timelines, clear funding goals. And if you can raise the funds, great. If you're falling short and you're not raising any funds and you're just saying it'd be great if we had all these things, but there's no money coming in, then obviously it might not be a way forward that's viable.
I totally agree with that. I think we do that with a lot of our builds in town anyway. Like, we have a timeline to get it done. Councillor Westbrook.
I think, excuse me, thank you, Maryse. I think a timeline is reasonable. I was thinking something like 18 months. But I just want to point out one little thing that Councillor Harrison is concerned with about some feelings of certain members of the committee or certain members of the family. Now that QBQs has taken on the task of trying to keep the building, those family relationships have been strongly improved. And so I don't think that's an issue anymore.
Okay.
And I wrote this thing at 5 o'clock yesterday morning. So, but I was struggling with the word will. I had the word originally could, and then similar, I thought gives us some flexibility. So I think we can work with it the way it is. Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
I guess the only other language in there that that I'm sort of confused about is the after the lodge building has been restored at no cost to the town. I do like the fact that that it's at no cost to the town, but the society, I understand, will be doing the restoration over an extended period of time, depending on what grants are available. So perhaps the language after the lodge building has been restored, perhaps that's okay to remove that line.
Councillor Harrison, I'm definitely not in favor of removing that line, just so you know. But anyway, Councillor Harrison.
No, I was just going to add, I wouldn't support that then, because for me, keeping it as revenue neutral for the town as possible, when we're dealing with a once-in-a-century pandemic and our small businesses are really struggling, there's a few more vacant commercial properties downtown, because I walked through there about a week ago. I'd have a really hard time justifying significant funding going to one project that wasn't originally in our strategic plan, which might have implications for the small businesses in the heart of our downtown, small independent businesses who I feel are really struggling.
Councillor Walker.
I didn't mean to remove the at the cost to no town. The thing is that it says after the lodge building has been restored. So the idea is to enter into a lease after the building's been restored. I think making sure that it's not at the cost of the town, I agree, is important. But having the caveat in there that it is leased to the society after the restoration is complete, I don't think it makes sense, because the society is going to have sort of a COVID plan and then a post-COVID plan, and restoration now will be different from what it will look like after COVID. So so just looking for feedback from Councillor Westbrook, perhaps if there's some adjustments there that you would be okay with.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Maryse. I thought about that, and I was kind of wordsmithing that myself yesterday morning. But because I added the word similar, I think like I said earlier, we have that flexibility. And I think the intent of this motion is clear. And as Councillor Harrison said, we will get a report back as to what that lease arrangement would look like. So I don't think we have to get into details. I think the concept of what we're proposing is right. And I think everybody involved knows what we're aiming for. So it's just a matter of getting the legal documents with the lease prepared, as our staff is very capable with lots of experience in these types of situations. They can prepare a report back that takes in consideration the comments that we've made with the cost before or after, so on. That can be covered when they bring us back the report on what type of lease arrangement we could have. The reason why, and I want to stress this, that the Qs are involved because they have been contacted by so many people. And I don't think we want to ask staff to follow up on who might be interested in the society and how they would do it. So I think put the ball in their court, so to speak, and bring us back a proposal that we can work with. And I think it's fine. I think this is a great community building exercise. I think everybody understands what we're trying to do. I don't think we have to work out every detail right now. I think the wording allows for enough flexibility to make this work. Thank you.
We need to somewhere, I think it has come up, gentlemen, that we had a timeline of 18 months, Councillor Westbrook. I'm not sure how you want to put that into, but I think it's important that we do have an end goal. If it's not achieved, then we have to look at something else. Councillor
Yes.
Westbrook.
Okay. Thank you, Maurice. That I would think that the Cultural Society, the St. Andrew's Lodge Historical and Cultural Society, would have to be established and have a plan, a work plan, presented to us within 18 months. And I'd like to make that a separate motion from this, so it doesn't confuse things more.
Work, just to have a plan in 18 months, or you're looking at 3 years before something's done. Is that correct?
I know there has to be a time limit, and I'm not sure what that time limit is for. I know it takes time to organize and get a society, and it should be a non-profit charitable organization so they can receive donations. That takes a bit of time. When I was looking at 18 months, I was looking at something that was done in a way that the building was safe, that it wasn't deteriorating any further, that the work had been started both on the outside and inside. That would make sure that the building will be there for a long time. So that's what I was looking for. But because I don't know for sure how long all this takes, and I know there should be some type of timeline, I think we will get a report back from staff as to how we can make this work. And to get bogged down on timelines right now or what that means, I think is not going to help today. I think we're making huge strides towards changing the course of action on this project. And I think we need to think about this and come up with a plan after having a report from staff, working with staff and others to make sure we go on doing this the right way. But I don't think we should push all this at this time.
I think my intent for the 18 months was have funding in place. The plans and stuff, they could do that. Their plans could happen at will. They could have plans in a week from now. I think it's important that we have an end game for the finances. So we can't let this go on for 5 or 6 years looking for money. I don't believe. We should give them a chance. Let's move forward, and you've got 18 months, whatever that looks like, to come up with the money. And if not, we're gonna have to look at something else, at least revisit something else to make so this park that we bought for $3.4 million doesn't have a shack sitting on it still. That's all I'm getting at.
Okay, may I make a suggestion? Okay, actually, Councillor Philmer had his hand up for some time.
Councillor Phil.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't expecting this to go that long. I have a couple flights that I have to get out. I was expecting what the community wanted was for us to stop the demolition of the building. We've done that. I think the rest of this can be done in a different meeting. But I wasn't expecting this to go that long, and I've got flights I got to get out. So unfortunately, I hold a full-time job. So
yes, that's good. Let's call the question on this, and then we work some other details out later.
I thought we still have. I think we should talk about the timeline. That's all. Let's get the timeline. Councillor Walker.
We're addressing to Q's to come up with a plan. Let's let them discuss that with staff as far as a reasonable timeline, because we're just guessing.
Thank
I
you.
suppose we could discuss that at a later time, but it will be a big part of the discussion, I can assure you. Councillor Harrison.
In 2 seconds, because I know Robert's busy. Timeline, I think it's a good idea to have the discussion with the proponents and staff to actually make sure it's fair, but it has to be a lot faster for a plan than 18 months.
Thank you. So Heather, to read the motion as you have it, because I'm quite confused where it is now too. So.
Thank you. So moved Councillor Westbrook, seconded Councillor Philmer, that council direct staff to support and work with the Qs in establishing the St. Andrew's Lodge Historical and Cultural Society, to which the town could lease the lodge building in a similar arrangement as exists with the Tosh Art Society after the lodge building has been restored at no cost to the town.
All those in favor, recorded vote, please. All those in favor?
Come on, Scott.
Opposed?
Okay, yeah, let's have the conversation.
Are you opposed or in favor, Councillor Harrison?
Yeah.
I'm in favor. We've done enough wordsmithing on this. That's fine.
Okay, so we've got one motion left. Councillor Filmer, you're sticking with us for a while?
It depends how long this is going to take.
Okay,
I imagine
so
this will
the
go a little
motion I
longer.
would make is just about, let's get a legal report to make sure we're following the letter of the law with this, because it's a little bit of a weird procedure, what we're doing, but should be fine. And let's also get a report on the cost for the rescission.
Thank you.
So
Councillor Westbrook.
I can make this very quick for you. That the top one, that council rescinds the previous motions as multiple regarding St. Andrews Lodge noted on October 28, 2020 regular council meeting of council, subject to legal opinion.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Councillor Harrison.
And just amending it, and a receipt from staff on the costs associated with the motion. For
Let's stick with this one first. It's an important, you
What amendment
brought
to
that up,
start?
and Director Filmer supported it.
Further discussion. What? To be
I
clear,
was
say that
just
one
thinking
more
of
time,
making a
Councillor
motion to
Westbrook.
amend.
Councillor
Sorry?
Harrison.
Sorry, I was thinking just making a motion to amend, because that's essentially what I laid on the table. We get a report on the legality, and then we also get a report
Oh,
on staff
actually,
costs.
You laid on the table the third motion. So
Yeah.
Councillor Westbrook, on the first motion, what was your amendment?
As it is, subject to legal opinion.
That was seconded by Councillor Filmer, I believe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Further discussion on that? I think that's on that amendment. There could be more. On this part of the amendment, all in favor? Unanimous. Hey, there we go. Look at us go.
Go to work. Go to work, Robert.
Anything else we need to do with this motion, gentlemen? Seeing none, I'll call the vote on the motion as amended. All in favor, recorded vote, please. Gentlemen, I think we're done.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Harrison.
I just move that we get a staff report on the costs associated with the motion to rescind, just so we know what the costs are when we're making that decision.
Well, that's the other part of that, wasn't it? I apologize.
Yeah.
I'll second that. I think that's important that everyone know what it's going to cost us at the end of the day. So,
Yeah,
including
I agree.
and I think everyone has to agree with, we need to know the costs.
Sure.
Further discussion. Seeing that, Councillor Walker.
Sorry, Robert. Just if those costs at the discretion of staff, whether to be done in camera or in public, would be my only concern.
Well, I would think at this point in time, we've done this whole conversation in public, I would.
My concern would be if the contractor wasn't wanting to have the cancellation costs made public as a part of a very public discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
Good point, actually. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Harrison.
I would just suggest it should go in camera anyways, and then in conversation with all the parties, if we decide to rise and report, ideally we rise and report. And if there's a good reason not to, there's a good reason not to.
Okay. I move that we defer this to an in-camera meeting.
Thank you.
Sorry for clarity, would the motion be
Yes.
that council receives a report on all costs associated with the motion to rescind to be received at an in-camera meeting?
Yeah, in particular as it relates to the contractor.
I think all of it, just keep it all in there. So that is the motion, and it,
Yeah.
who seconded that? I think it was myself. So
Yes, you
we're
did.
good. Yeah, so we're good. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Councilor
Thank you, my
Walker,
worship.
I'm not sure where you are on this whole thing moving forward on Sunday. I wish you the best of luck, and I imagine your nerves must be a little bit tattered by now.
I've been focused on the emails and phone calls that have been coming in. So this week's gone very quickly, but I appreciate your words.
Thanks for your help on this too, Adam.
It'll certainly make your Zoom sign a lot less complicated.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. We're done.
Thank you, Maurice.